The wind cut through the quiet streets of Willow Creek like a whisper of sorrow, stirring powdery snow across the sidewalk. It was early morning, and most of the town was still asleep, the windows of homes glowing dimly from kitchen lights as coffee brewed and heaters hummed. The only sound was the occasional crunch of snow beneath boots, and the faint, rhythmic tapping of a puppy's shivering paws against the cold pavement. She sat alone, barely more than a shadow against a bench at the bus stop on the corner of Maple and Rosewood. Her fur was damp from the falling snow, a soft brown and black that dusted like charcoal over her ears and snout. Around her neck, a vibrant red scarf stood out like a flare against the gray morning. It was tied in a neat little knot, slightly too large for her small frame. Lily didn't whimper. She didn't bark. She just watched each car that drove by. She tilted her head, ears perked, as if listening for a familiar engine. Every person that passed, she sat up straighter, tail wagging tentatively before sinking back down when they hurried past with uncertain glances. The cold bit at her paws, but she didn't move from her spot. Pinned to her collar was a small, crumpled note, written in uneven, childish handwriting, the ink slightly smudged from snow. The words were simple, and they broke the heart of anyone who stopped long enough to read them. Her name is Lily. She's gentle. Please take care of her. I had no other choice. It was Officer Marla Jennings who found her first. Marla was doing her usual morning patrol, her cruiser's heater barely keeping up with the frigid dawn. She almost missed Lily, mistaking her for a mound of snow until she caught sight of the red scarf. She pulled over and approached slowly, not wanting to startle the pup. "Hey there, sweetheart," she murmured, crouching down. "You're not supposed to be out here all alone." Lily looked up, eyes wide and deep with sadness, yet trusting. She didn't flinch as Marla reached out to gently stroke her head. It was then that Marla saw the note. She unfolded it, her breath catching in her throat as she read it twice, once quickly, once slowly. The officer glanced around, scanning for anyone nearby. But the street was empty. Just the puppy, just the snow, just the silence. Marla scooped Lily up in her arms. She was so light, her body trembling against the warmth of the officer's uniform. "I've got you now," she whispered, cradling the puppy like a child. "You're not alone anymore." At the Willow Creek Police Department, Marla set Lily up in the break room with a soft blanket and a bowl of water. The department didn't have a formal shelter setup. Willow Creek was too small for that, but officers had made a habit of caring for stray animals until the local vet or rescue group could step in. Word spread fast. It always did in small towns. By noon, people were stopping by the station. Some came out of curiosity, others because they'd seen the post Marla's teenage daughter had made on social media. A photo of Lily, wrapped in the red scarf, looking up at the camera with soulful eyes. The caption simply read, "Someone left her at the bus stop with this note. Broken heart." The post went viral locally. Within hours, it had been shared across the county. Hundreds of comments flooding in, people offering blankets, treats, adoption offers. But for Marla, something about the note stuck with her. It wasn't just a typical abandonment. There was no malice, no neglect in Lily's eyes. She had been loved. Recently. Deeply. I had no other choice. Who would write that? That evening, as the town tucked in under a heavier snowfall, Marla visited the local vet, Dr. Susan Adler, who had agreed to take Lily in for a checkup and temporary foster. "She's about 10 weeks old," Susan said gently, running her hands over Lily's frame as the pup curled into her lap. "Perfectly healthy. No signs of abuse. A little underfed, but that's not uncommon. She's been cared for until recently." "Do you think someone just dumped her?" Marla asked. Susan shook her head. "No. Whoever did this didn't want to. That note wasn't written in haste. It was written by someone young, maybe even a child." Marla's brow furrowed. "A child?" Susan nodded. "There's love in the handwriting. That kind of note doesn't come from someone cruel." Lily nuzzled closer into Susan's sweater, her little nose twitching as she drifted into sleep. Marla watched her, feeling an ache settle deep in her chest. Somewhere, there was a child, missing this puppy, grieving, scared, and she intended to find them, The next morning, as snowplows cleared the streets and school buses rolled through town, Marla made a quiet decision. She reached out to Principal Holloway at Willow Creek Elementary. "Check your attendance records," she said. "Look for anyone who's been missing the past few days. I have a feeling this isn't just a stray case." Meanwhile, Lily had become the town's sweetheart. Susan kept her warm in her vet clinic, posting daily updates online. Lily's morning snuggle report became a regular feature, with photos of her wrapped in fleece, playing with stuffed toys, or dozing by the fireplace. People dropped by just to see her, bringing toys, treats, even little hand-knit sweaters. But Lily, she still waited. Every time the clinic door opened, her ears perked up. Every time she heard a boy's voice outside, her tail wagged slowly, hopefully. She didn't bark, didn't cry. She just looked, waiting, watching, hoping. That red scarf never left her neck. It was more than just fabric. It was a promise. The heater in room 208 at the Willow Creek Motel wheezed with tired effort, pushing out uneven gusts of lukewarm air. The wallpaper was peeling near the window, where frost crept along the glass like silver veins. Inside, a boy sat cross-legged on the bed, hugging his knees, staring at the snow swirling beyond the glass. His name was Eli Morgan, 9 years old, dark-haired, quiet, the kind of boy who always sat at the back of the class, not because he didn't care, but because he didn't want to be noticed. And he was alone. Well, almost. In the corner of the room, his mother lay curled under the motel blanket, her body gaunt and tired, her face turned toward the wall. Her breathing was slow, steady. She hadn't woken since early morning. The last thing she'd said to him, softly, through cracked lips, was, "Be strong for both of us, baby." Just for a little while. That little while had stretched across 2 days now. Eli didn't cry anymore. Not since the second night in the shelter. Not since his mom said they had to leave. Not since he gave Lily away. The ache in his chest was constant, like holding his breath underwater. Every time he thought about her, her warm fur, the way she used to curl next to him when the world felt too big, his throat tightened. He could still feel her kiss on his cheek the morning he let her go. She trusted him, even at the bus stop when she shivered and stared up at him, her tail wagging weakly. She trusted that he was doing the right thing, that he wasn't leaving her forever. But he was. He had no choice. 3 days earlier, they'd walked for nearly 2 hours in the snow. Eli hadn't told his mother where they were going. She thought they were looking for food, for warmth, for somewhere to sit and rest their tired bodies. But in Eli's pocket was a pen and a scrap of notebook paper. And in his heart, the weight of a decision no child should ever have to make. When they got to the corner of Maple and Rosewood, he knew what he had to do. He kissed Lily on the head, tied the red scarf around her neck, his favorite one, the only warm thing he had left, and whispered, "Wait here. Someone kind will find you. Someone who has food. Someone warm. Someone better." He folded the note he'd written and pinned it to her collar, hands shaking. "Her name is Lily. She's gentle. Please take care of her. I had no other choice." He didn't look back after walking away, but every step felt like leaving part of his soul behind in the snow. Back in the motel, Eli unzipped his backpack, the same one he used when he still went to school, when things were normal. Inside were a few crushed crackers, a small water bottle, and a photograph. It was wrinkled at the corners, but he'd protected it fiercely. In the photo, a younger Eli held Lily in his arms the day they first found her, a newborn pup in a cardboard box outside the grocery store. She'd fit in the palm of his hand back then. He remembered begging his mom to keep her. He remembered the way Lily had looked at him, like she'd picked him too. His mother had hesitated, of course. They didn't have much, never did. But they had love. And sometimes Eli thought that was enough. For a while it was. At that very moment, only 4 blocks away, Marla Jennings was in the elementary school office with Principal Holloway, flipping through the list of absences. Her eyes landed on Eli's name. "Eli Morgan," she said aloud. "Missed the last 5 days." Holloway frowned. "Yes, troubled family situation. His mother's been in and out of shelters. We tried contacting her, but the number on file is disconnected. No current address. Just a motel listed from a few months back." Do you have a photo? Holloway handed over a school file. Eli's eyes were downcast even in the picture. A quiet boy with messy hair and a shy, uncertain smile. Marla held up her phone beside the photo, showing an image of Lily. Do you think this could be his dog? The principal's brow furrowed. Ah, yes. I remember him drawing pictures of a puppy last fall. He always talked about his best friend Lily. I thought it was just imaginary. I had no idea. Marla felt her heart squeeze. A child had loved that dog. A child had made the hardest choice of his young life, and done it with more courage than most adults. We need to find him, she said. Eli, meanwhile, zipped up his backpack and stood beside the window, watching people pass below. He pressed his forehead to the glass and whispered, I hope she's warm. He pictured Lily curled up beside a fireplace, being fed by kind hands, her tail wagging again. That image was the only thing keeping him together. Suddenly, a knock at the motel door startled him. He hesitated, then crossed the room. Another knock, this one softer. He opened the door slowly, just a crack. On the other side stood a woman in uniform. Friendly eyes, snow on her shoulders. Hi, she said gently. Are you Eli? He froze. His first instinct was to run, but something in her voice stopped him. Something safe. I'm Officer Marla Jennings. I work here in Willow Creek. He didn't speak. I think you're the one who wrote this, she said, holding up the note. The blood drained from Eli's face. Marla knelt, her voice warm and calm. Lily's safe. She's okay. That broke him. He fell into her arms, tears spilling freely for the first time in days, sobs racking his tiny frame as weeks of fear and silence cracked open inside him. I didn't want to leave her, he cried. I know, sweetheart. I know, Marla whispered, holding him like he was her own. You did the bravest thing I've ever seen. From the bed, Eli's mother stirred, turning over slowly, confused and groggy. Marla looked at her and said softly, We're going to help you, all of you. For the first time in days, Eli allowed hope to take a tiny root in his chest. And somewhere across town, Lily lifted her head and stared toward the door, her tail thumping once, softly, as if sensing something had changed. The bell rang at Willow Creek Elementary, echoing through the brick hallways as boots squeaked on freshly mopped floors. Outside, the snow had finally stopped, leaving behind a glassy silence and a clean white blanket over the town. But inside room 3B, the world was anything but quiet. 22 children bustled in, shaking snow from their jackets, laughing and talking over one another as they took their seats. At the front of the room stood Ms. Harper, a woman in her mid-30s with kind eyes and a cardigan 2 sizes too big, watching them with a tired but gentle smile. Her classroom had seen better days. Some of the desks were scratched and the curtains had long lost their color. But there was warmth in the room that went beyond the radiator's hum. A warmth she fought hard to maintain. But today was different. Today, something miraculous was about to happen. Okay, she called out, clapping her hands. Let's settle down. The chatter dimmed, though a few kids still whispered. Miss Harper reached into her tote bag and pulled out something unusual, something fuzzy. Or rather someone. The children gasped. Wrapped in a knitted blue blanket, with 2 dark ears peeking out and the faintest twitch of a nose, was Lily. Ms. Harper smiled. Class, I'd like you to meet a very special guest today. Lily peeked out from the blanket, blinking in the light, her nose twitching at the new smells, chalk, crayons, glue, and the sugary scent of kids' lunches tucked into backpacks. She's so cute, someone whispered. Can we pet her? Asked another. Ms. Harper raised a hand gently. One at a time. Lily's been through a lot, and we want her to feel safe. But yes, you'll all get to say hello. At the back of the class, a boy named Javier shifted in his seat. He rarely spoke, barely smiled. Since his brother had passed away the year before, he'd become a shadow in the room. Ms. Harper had tried everything, art projects, reading buddies, even one-on-one talks, but his grief was thick, unreachable. Until now, when Lily turned her head and looked straight at him, her tail thumped twice against the blanket. It was the first time Javier had lifted his eyes in weeks. And in that quiet, shared glance, something passed between them. Ms. Harper knelt at the front of the class, gently placing Lily in her lap. Her name is Lily. She was found at a bus stop, left there with a note. She was waiting for someone who couldn't come back. The class fell completely silent. She's safe now, but she still looks out the window sometimes, still hoping. A few kids looked at the windows instinctively, as if they, too, might see someone out there. We're going to help her heal, Ms. Harper continued. And maybe, just maybe, she'll help us too. And she did. That week, Lily became part of the classroom. Every morning, she greeted the children at the door, her tail wagging gently as each child took a turn giving her a treat or a scratch behind the ears. She had her own corner with a cozy blanket and a bowl of water, and the students took turns being her guardian of the day, a title they wore proudly. But it wasn't just her presence. It was her effect. Children who had trouble focusing began reading aloud to her during silent reading. Kids who never spoke started drawing pictures of her, slipping them under her blanket like love letters. One boy even wrote a poem, Lily Waits and Lily Loves, a tail that wags, soft as doves. She came to us through snow and cold, and made our classroom brave and bold. Even Ms. Harper noticed the change in herself. For months, she had carried her own grief quietly. After losing her father, she had buried herself in work, hiding behind lesson plans and spelling tests. But Lily's quiet companionship made the silence easier to bear. Each time Lily lay her head on Ms. Harper's feet while she graded papers, something inside the teacher slowly began to mend. Then came the day when Eli returned to school. After social services had stepped in, his mother was able to get medical treatment and was now in recovery. They were moved to transitional housing just 5 blocks from the school. It wasn't much, but it was safe, and it was warm. Eli had been nervous to come back. He'd missed a lot, and even more, he didn't know how to explain, how to face the kids who might have heard the story. But the moment he walked into room 3B, his world froze. There she was. Across the room, curled up beside the reading rug, was Lily. Her head lifted, her ears twitched, and then, without hesitation, she bolted across the room, skidding slightly on the floor as she launched herself into his arms. The class gasped. Ms. Harper's hand flew to her mouth. And Eli sank to the floor, holding her tightly as tears streamed down his cheeks. "I thought I lost you," he whispered into her fur. Lily whined softly, licking his face, her tail wagging like a windmill, her whole body shaking with joy. The class broke into applause. Even Javier stood, clapping softly, his smile small but real. Later that day, Ms. Harper invited Eli to the front of the class. Still holding Lily in his lap, he told his story. Not the hard details, but enough. How things got tough. How he had to make a choice. How Lily had trusted him, even when he didn't trust himself. And how love meant doing the hardest thing sometimes. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even Ms. Harper had to dab her cheeks with a tissue. "Sometimes," she said, "we don't realize how strong we are until we have to let go of something we love." But Lily didn't have to be let go anymore. From that day forward, she became the official emotional support dog for Room 3B. Principal Holloway approved it. The district signed off. Parents volunteered to rotate care during weekends. And Marla Jennings, who visited often, made sure Lily was part of a growing outreach program for at-risk children across the town. She became more than a dog. She became a symbol of loyalty, of healing, of second chances. And every morning, when the snow returned and the bus rolled past the corner of Maple and Rosewood, Lily would glance out the classroom window, not in sadness, but in memory, because she knew now. She hadn't been left behind. She'd been sent forward to find her way to exactly where she was needed most. The sterile smell of disinfectant lingered in the halls of Willow Creek Children's Hospital, mingling with the soft beeping of heart monitors and the quiet murmur of nurses' shoes against the vinyl floors. Though the snow had stopped falling outside, the chill of winter still lived in the bones of the building, especially on the 3rd floor, in room 319. Inside that room, Noah Simmons, a 7-year-old with dark circles beneath his eyes and tubes in his arms, lay in bed staring blankly at the ceiling. His mother sat nearby, flipping pages of a magazine without reading a single word. She had spent the last 6 weeks hoping, praying, waiting for a change. But Noah barely spoke, barely moved. Ever since the accident, it was like something inside him had turned off. He hadn't walked since the crash. Not because he couldn't, but because he wouldn't. The doctors said it was trauma, grief. His older brother, Max, had been driving when the car slid off the icy road. Max hadn't made it. Noah had, physically. But emotionally, he was stuck, unreachable. Until today. Downstairs in the hospital lobby, Ms. Harper stood near the front desk, with Lily sitting obediently at her side, tail gently sweeping the floor. She was freshly groomed, wearing her now signature red scarf, cleaned and stitched at the edges. A soft therapy dog in training patch was clipped to her collar. The idea had come from Marla Jennings, the officer who had rescued Lily. After seeing the effect the puppy had on her classroom, and especially on Eli, Marla had contacted the hospital, and after weeks of forms and clearances, Lily had been invited to visit patients on a trial basis. "Are you sure she's ready?" Ms. Harper had asked. Marla smiled, giving Lily a scratch behind the ear. "Honestly, I think we're the ones who aren't ready. She's known what her job is from the very beginning." The elevator doors opened with a ding. Ms. Harper stepped out onto the pediatric floor, Lily trotting beside her, ears perked and eyes scanning. She paused at the nurse's station, where Nurse Candace smiled warmly. "Room 319, she said, pointing down the hallway. "It's a tough one. Little boy hasn't said a word in weeks." "We'll be gentle," Ms. Harper replied. As they approached the room, Lily slowed. She always seemed to know when something sacred was about to happen. Inside, Noah remained motionless, eyes still trained on the ceiling. His mother looked up as they entered, confused at first, then curious. "Hi," Ms. Harper said softly. "I'm a teacher from the elementary school across town. This is Lily. She's a special dog. Would it be okay if we said hello?" The mother looked toward the bed. He might not respond. "That's okay," Ms. Harper smiled. "She doesn't need him to talk." Lily moved forward slowly, stopping just short of the bed. She sat down, tilted her head, and waited. Nothing. Noah didn't blink, didn't flinch. But Lily didn't move. 5 minutes passed, 10, and then, without a sound, she rested her chin on the edge of the bed. Just a gentle gesture. Still no reaction, until Lily let out a soft whimper, almost like a question. And slowly, so slowly, it was easy to miss. Noah turned his head. His eyes found hers, and Lily didn't wag, didn't move closer. She just looked, and waited. Then, Noah's fingers twitched. Ms. Harper saw it first. Her breath caught in her throat. The mother leaned forward. "Noah." His hand moved again, reaching, barely, and Lily responded by inching forward and nuzzling into his palm. The contact broke something open. Noah began to cry. Silent tears at first, then sobs. His mother gasped, rushing to his side. "It's okay, baby, I'm here. I'm here. I miss Max," Noah choked out between cries. It was the first thing he'd said in 41 days. Lily stayed right there, not moving an inch, anchoring him like a lighthouse in a storm. The next week, Lily returned. Then the week after that. Each time, Noah lit up a little more. He began sitting up in bed, talking to his doctors, smiling when Lily entered the room. They played gentle games, tossing a softball, brushing her fur, reading stories together. And then came the day no one expected. Noah asked for his walker. It was slow, awkward, but he stood, and Lily was there, walking beside him every step. Word spread quickly. The hospital created a new program, Pause for Hope, where certified therapy dogs would visit regularly. But the first and most beloved member? Lily. Her photo was placed on the hospital's wall of heroes. The caption beneath it read, "Sometimes, healing doesn't come from medicine. Sometimes, it comes on 4 legs, with a red scarf and quiet eyes." Later that evening, back in room 3B, Eli sat at his desk drawing a picture of Lily. She was surrounded by smiling children and bright yellow stars. Ms. Harper knelt beside him. "She made a little boy smile today," she said gently. one who hadn't smiled in a long time. Eli smiled, his eyes glowing. She always knew how to do that. She's special, Eli, and she wouldn't have had this chance if not for you. He looked down at his drawing. She saved me first. The snow was falling again. Outside Willow Creek Elementary, the flakes danced under the dim glow of streetlights like tiny shards of silence, each one landing quietly, but with purpose. Inside room 3B, the classroom was still. Desks were neatly stacked, crayons tucked away, and construction paper hearts decorated the bulletin boards, remnants from Valentine's Day. Ms. Harper sat alone at her desk, the only light coming from a small lamp by the window. Her cardigan was draped over the back of her chair, and her reading glasses sat abandoned beside a cold cup of tea. Lily lay curled at her feet, her chin resting on the soft wool rug the students had brought from home, so she could feel comfy. They'd said. It was quiet, too quiet, and Ms. Harper was grateful, because for the first time in months, she let herself cry. It hadn't been an easy year. Everyone thought she was strong, graceful, a steady hand guiding her students through every math quiz, every spelling test, every emotional breakdown. But inside, she'd been carrying a grief so heavy, it almost swallowed her. Last spring, she had buried her husband. Cancer. Aggressive. Unfair. They'd married young, college sweethearts, traveled, taught in different cities, built a life full of books and laughter and plans. Plans that never included hospitals, or wheelchairs, or the soft buzz of a heart monitor going flat in the middle of the night. When he died, Ms. Harper didn't take time off. She couldn't, not because the school required her to stay, but because silence was more terrifying than sadness. So she came back to room 3B, to her chalkboard and her coffee mugs and the gentle chaos of children. But something had changed. There was a part of her that had gone quiet, detached. She smiled, laughed when she was supposed to, gave stickers to good readers. But she never let herself feel too deeply, because if she did, she wasn't sure she'd survive it. Until Lily. She hadn't expected much when Marla first brought Lily to the classroom. She thought it would be one sweet moment, a nice distraction for the kids, a lesson in compassion. But what she didn't expect was how Lily saw her. Every day, Lily would wander the classroom, greeting children, wagging her tail, accepting hugs and high fives. But she always came back to Ms. Harper. Always. She'd sit at her feet while she graded papers, rest her head on her knee during story time. Look at her, not with the wild joy of a child, but with the quiet understanding of someone who had also lost something important. That night in the classroom, with the snow falling outside and Lily sleeping beside her, Ms. Harper finally opened the drawer of her desk and pulled out the envelope she hadn't touched in months. It was addressed to her in handwriting she knew by heart. Inside was a letter from her husband, written weeks before he died. She'd never had the strength to read it, until now. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. And then, as she read, tears began to fall slowly, then faster, each word unraveling the tight knot inside her chest. My dearest Ellie, I know you're probably reading this with a frown on your face and a mug of that awful chamomile tea you pretend to like. But I needed to write this, because if love could keep me here, I would have never left you. I want you to promise me something. When the days get hard, and they will, you'll find your way back to the light. You have always carried light, Ellie. In your eyes, in your laugh, in the way you love those kids like they're your own. Don't let the world dim you. Don't let grief win. You once told me that healing is not about forgetting. It's about choosing to feel again. So feel everything, even the hard parts. And when the time comes, let someone or something help you. Maybe it'll be a kid. Maybe it'll be a dog. Maybe it'll be both. Ms. Harper laughed through her tears. You always knew, she whispered. She looked down at Lily, who had stirred slightly, as if she felt a shift in energy. Ms. Harper reached down and stroked her soft fur. You were right, she said, voice barely audible. She's helping me find my way back. The next morning, Ms. Harper arrived early to school. The snow had stopped. She stood at the front of the classroom with a new energy, a spark returning to her eyes. She took the scarf from around her own neck, a simple gray one her husband had given her on their last Christmas together, and tied it gently around Lily's collar, just beneath the red one. A symbol, not of replacing loss, but of carrying it forward. Later, as the children piled into the room with their backpacks and snowy boots, Lily trotted to greet them, her scarf swaying as she moved. Javier, who had drawn her every day since she arrived, gasped. She got a new scarf. Ms. Harper smiled. A gift, from someone who loved her from afar. Can we all give her gifts? Eli asked, beaming. You already have, she said softly. That day, they started a new class project, Gifts That Heal. Each student would write a letter, make a drawing, or donate something small, like a book or toy, that had brought them comfort during a tough time. These would be shared with children at the hospital, where Lily now visited weekly, a way to spread what Lily had given them. Hope, compassion, connection. Ms. Harper added her own contribution. She printed her husband's letter and placed it, folded neatly, into an envelope with a note that simply read, Sometimes the light comes back in the shape of a dog. That afternoon, Lily sat by the window again, watching the wind blow fresh flurries across the schoolyard. Ms. Harper stood beside her, hand resting gently on her head. She was just a puppy, she murmured, cold, shivering, waiting. Lily looked up at her. But now, Ms. Harper continued, she's everything. The snow had finally stopped for good. It was still cold in Pine Hollow, crisp air and frosty windows, but the sun had begun to stretch a little longer across the rooftops, warming the town with its slow return. Spring wasn't here yet, not fully, but you could feel it coming. And something else was blooming too, something invisible but powerful. Hope. It began with a single flyer, a simple sheet of white paper posted to the bulletin board at Marla Jennings' precinct. Lily's Legacy, a community day of kindness. Join us as we celebrate the story that brought Pine Hollow together. Therapy dog visits, letters of love, art, music, and warmth, all inspired by one abandoned puppy and the note that changed everything. Marla had written it herself. She taped the flyer to the police station wall, then to the bakery, then the library, then the school. By that evening, it was everywhere, and no one asked who Lily was, because everyone already knew. At Pine Hollow Elementary, Ms. Harper stood before her class with a large poster board. Who wants to help plan our booth? She asked. Every single hand shot up. Eli bounced in his seat. Can we do paw print art again? Yes. And stories, said Ava. We can write stories about Lily. Can we make toys for other dogs? Javier asked. Ms. Harper smiled, moved by their excitement. We can do all of it. At Willow Creek Hospital, nurses from every floor gathered in the staff lounge to brainstorm. Lily's visits changed everything, Nurse Candace said. Not just for the patients, for us too. They planned a booth filled with patient artwork, handprints and letters and photos of children hugging Lily. Even Noah, the once silent boy, had drawn a crayon portrait of himself walking beside her, both of them smiling. And in the corner, in careful 7-year-old handwriting, it read, She gave me my legs back. At the fire station, Chief Reynolds called his team together. She's brought more healing to this town than any emergency crew ever could, he said, placing a box of bandanas on the table. Let's show her how much she means. They started collecting dog supplies, leashes, food bowls, jackets for the cold, things they could give away to struggling families with pets. A kindness kit, they called it, a way to keep Lily's spirit alive. At the bakery, owner Anna stitched a tiny red scarf and tied it around a chocolate cupcake, topped with marshmallow fluff. They sold out in an hour, so she made 300 more. She renamed them Lily Cakes. Proceeds would go to the town's new Animal Hope Fund, created by the mayor himself after seeing how one puppy had united an entire community. And through it all, Lily remained unaware of the movement she had sparked. She still slept curled beside Ms. Harper's desk, still rode quietly beside Officer Marla on her way to hospital visits, still greeted children with gentle eyes and soft nudges. She didn't know that people across the town were planning an entire day in her honor, but she didn't need to. She just kept giving love, as if her little red scarf carried not just warmth, but purpose. The day finally arrived. Lily's legacy. A community day of kindness. The elementary school lawn transformed into a festival. Colorful booths lined the sidewalk, some selling baked goods, others displaying children's art, and others offering therapy dog petting zones with Lily as the star guest. Handmade banners fluttered in the breeze, reading, "Be kind like Lily," and "You don't need a voice to be heard." There were music performances from the middle school band, a table where kids wrote letters to shelter animals, and even a photo wall titled "Dogs Who Healed Us," where townsfolk pinned pictures of pets that had changed their lives. The line to meet Lily stretched down the block. Parents held toddlers. Teenagers took selfies. Elderly couples knelt to touch her head gently, whispering thank yous she would never quite understand, but maybe somehow did. Officer Marla stood with a cup of hot cider, watching the scene with misty eyes. Beside her, Ms. Harper stood with Eli, who was holding a stack of hand-drawn thank you cards. "You did this," Ms. Harper said softly. Marla chuckled. "No, she did this." Eli turned to them. "Do you think Lily knows that we all love her?" Ms. Harper bent down to Lily's level and gently cupped her face. "I think she's always known." Later that afternoon, as the sun dipped lower and the wind picked up, a hush fell over the crowd as a small wooden box was carried to the center stage. It was decorated with paw prints and carved letters. Inside was a single item, the original note, the one pinned to Lily's collar that snowy morning at the bus stop. "Her name is Lily. She's gentle. Please take care of her. I had no other choice." Officer Marla stepped forward, microphone in hand. She looked out at the faces, hundreds of them, and her voice cracked slightly as she began. "I found her on a morning when I didn't expect to feel anything special. Just another snowy day. Just another shift." She looked down at Lily, who sat patiently beside her. But she wasn't just another anything. She was the beginning of something beautiful. She paused. "And to whoever wrote this note, if you're out there, if you ever see this, you didn't abandon her. You gave her to us. And we will never stop being grateful." The crowd erupted in applause. Children cheered. Parents clapped. Some people cried openly. And Lily? She looked up at the sky, blinked slowly, and wagged her tail. The evening sky deepened into hues of purple and gold as the last few people made their way home, their laughter still echoing faintly from the festival that had just wrapped up. The community day of kindness was over, but its warmth lingered in the air, filling every corner of Pine Hollow. It was a day everyone would remember for years to come, but what no one knew was that somewhere in the shadows, someone was watching. It started with a boy, a quiet figure standing at the edge of the festival, his eyes fixed on the scene in front of him. He wore a gray hoodie, its hood pulled low, hiding his face. He wasn't much taller than a child, but there was a weight in his posture that seemed to belong to someone much older. He had come alone, unnoticed by the people around him. He knew about the kindness day. He had heard the stories of the little puppy, Lily, and how she had changed everything. But the boy wasn't here for the celebration. He had come for Lily. For a long time, he stood in silence, watching her as she sat in the middle of the crowd, a quiet queen surrounded by adoring townsfolk. Her tail swished gently, her head high, and every once in a while, she would nudge someone's hand, inviting more affection. The boy felt something twist inside him, a knot of longing, of sorrow. He shifted from one foot to the other, unsure of what to do, caught between the desire to approach and the fear of being seen. But Lily wasn't just any dog. She was his dog. 2 years ago, Lily had been his. Or, at least, she had been meant to be. He remembered the day they met, the way his mom had picked Lily out of the litter. His dad had been there too, laughing as the puppy clumsily tumbled into his arms. They were a family then, a family full of laughter, love, and plans. But plans, as he'd learned in the most painful way, didn't always stay intact. It was only a few months later when his world crumbled. His dad was gone. A sudden accident. A broken heart. A mother who couldn't stop crying. And with his father's absence came a hole. A gap so vast it felt like it could swallow them whole. For a while, Lily had tried to fill that space. She curled up next to him on the couch, nuzzled his cheek when he cried, and followed him around the house like a shadow. But even her playful antics couldn't erase the pain. His mother couldn't handle it. The weight of grief, the pressures of the bills, and the constant reminder of the life they had lost. Everything felt like too much. And then, one night, after yet another argument, she had made a decision. She couldn't keep Lily. She couldn't keep the memories. She couldn't keep him. That night, the boy's heart shattered when his mother told him what she had done. Lily was gone. Gone. His mother had taken her to the bus stop in the snow, just as the note had described. She hadn't meant to leave her forever, just to give her away, to let someone else take care of her, someone who could handle the pain, someone who wouldn't be haunted by the shadow of their lost love. But the boy knew the truth. His mother had abandoned her, and he couldn't bear it. He had stood at that bus stop for hours, waiting, hoping, praying that someone would come to return Lily. But no one came. No one cared enough. That was the night he began to fade into the shadows. The next few months passed in a blur. The boy withdrew from his friends, his schoolwork, his life. He spent hours wandering the woods, hiding in corners, living in a quiet fog of sadness. It was as though a piece of him had been taken away, and no matter how much he searched, he couldn't find it again. Lily was gone, and his heart was empty. But now, standing in the shadows of the festival, watching Lily, surrounded by the warmth of the town, he felt something stir inside him. The grief, the guilt, the pain. It hadn't gone away, but it was different. It wasn't as sharp as it had been. For the first time in a long while, he felt a flicker of something else. The crowd began to thin, but Lily was still there, greeting a few stragglers, her tail wagging with each pat. Her eyes caught the boy's for a split second, and time seemed to freeze. For a brief moment, it was as though the world stood still, and Lily looked straight at him. She knew him. He knew her. Before he could stop himself, the boy took a step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. The town had embraced Lily, but he had never stopped loving her. He wasn't sure what he was doing, if he was ready to face his mother, to face the world. But for this one moment, he needed to be near her. He moved through the crowd, his feet feeling heavy with each step. Ms. Harper noticed him first. Her gaze followed the boy as he approached the stage where Lily was standing. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her presence, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. She could feel the weight of his sorrow. Lily, who had been distracted by a group of excited children, suddenly turned her head, her ears perking up as if sensing something important. Slowly, she walked toward him. The boy stopped in his tracks as Lily approached, her paws light against the earth, her nose sniffing the air, her tail wagging slowly. When she reached him, she paused for a moment, as if unsure, and then, without hesitation, she bounded forward, her body pressing against his legs, her face nuzzling into his chest. For the first time in what felt like years, the boy closed his eyes and let himself breathe. Lily's warmth, her gentle affection, it was as though time had reversed, bringing back everything he had lost. He bent down, his hands trembling as he stroked her fur, the sound of her soft whines filling the air. Ms. Harper watched them both from a distance, understanding what had just unfolded. Lily had found him, and in doing so, she had healed a broken heart that no one else could touch. The boy's mother, standing just behind the crowd, watched with wide eyes. She had come to find him, to apologize, to explain. But in that moment, as her son reunited with the puppy she had abandoned, she knew something had changed. She couldn't fix everything. She couldn't erase the hurt. But maybe, just maybe, she could start to make it right. The air was cool, the sky a pale orange as the last traces of the festival light began to fade. The streets of Pine Hollow grew quieter, the echoes of laughter and music slowly replaced by the chirping of crickets and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. But for the boy, the world felt a little brighter. He stood there, Lily nestled against him, her warmth sinking into his soul like a soft balm. Her presence was a reminder that no matter how lost he felt, no matter how broken, there was always a way forward. He hadn't expected this reunion, hadn't thought he could ever feel whole again. But in this simple, unspoken moment, he felt as though a piece of him had returned. The boy gently stroked Lily's fur, his hands trembling slightly. She looked up at him, her deep, trusting eyes shining with a love that needed no words. It was the kind of love that didn't ask for anything in return. It just was. Ms. Harper had been watching from a distance, her heart swelling with emotion. She had known something profound was happening, but to witness it, to see the boy find the courage to reach out, to reconnect with his dog, it was something words couldn't capture. She stepped forward, her voice soft as she approached him. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked gently. The boy nodded, his throat tight. I didn't think I'd ever be okay," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Lily lifted her head at the sound of Ms. Harper's voice, and the boy smiled faintly. "She remembers me," he said, almost in disbelief. "She remembers everything." Ms. Harper crouched down to Lily's level, her hand brushing through the puppy's soft fur. "Dogs never forget," she said quietly. "They hold on to the love they're given." The boy swallowed hard, the weight of those words sinking in. He had been so lost in the grief of losing his father, and then losing Lily, that he had never considered the possibility of coming back. But now, in this moment, something had shifted inside him. He wasn't sure where this path would lead, but for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to take the first step forward. A voice from behind him made the boy flinch, and he turned around to see his mother standing there, her eyes wide and full of emotion. She hadn't moved when she first saw him with Lily, hadn't known what to say. But now, seeing the bond between them, seeing the way the boy was holding on to Lily, as if she was the only thing that could keep him grounded, she knew she had to act. She took a tentative step forward. "Eli," she whispered. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I'm so sorry." The boy didn't speak for a long time. He just stood there, the weight of his emotions too heavy to express. His mother stepped closer, her hands trembling as she reached out toward him. "I know I hurt you," she continued. "I know I made things worse when I let her go. I thought I was doing what was best, but I see now how much she means to you. And I see how much I hurt you by keeping you from her." Eli closed his eyes. There was so much he wanted to say, so much anger, confusion, and pain. But in the end, what he felt most was something unexpected: relief. Relief that his mother had finally seen what he had needed her to see. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "but I don't want to hold on to this pain anymore." His mother's heart broke. She had expected anger, maybe even rejection, but instead, she heard the voice of a child who had been waiting for her to acknowledge what she had taken from him. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said, her voice barely audible. "I'll spend the rest of my life making it right, Eli." Lily whined softly and nudged the boy's hand, as though urging him to take the first step, to heal. Eli bent down, pressing his forehead against hers for a moment, the tears he had held back for so long finally breaking free. For the first time in what felt like forever, Eli allowed himself to grieve the loss of his father without feeling the weight of guilt, without feeling like he had to be strong for everyone else. He cried, the tears soaking into Lily's fur, and as he did, it felt like the healing had begun. Later that night, as the town of Pine Hollow settled into the quiet of the evening, Eli sat on the porch of his home with Lily by his side. The house was small, the lights dim, but it felt like home again. It had felt so empty for so long, the silence between him and his mother too loud to ignore. But now, with Lily curled up beside him, the house felt a little warmer, a little less cold. His mother came out and sat beside him, a cup of tea in her hands. She didn't speak right away, just sat quietly, watching as Eli scratched Lily's ears, the puppy's eyes half closed in contentment. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know where we go from here," she said quietly, "but I do know one thing. I don't want to lose you again." Eli didn't answer at first. He wasn't sure what the future held, or if his relationship with his mother could ever go back to how it once was. But in this moment, with Lily by his side, he knew one thing for certain. He had love. He had the chance to rebuild, to take things one day at a time. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The next morning, Eli woke up to find Lily lying at the foot of his bed, her tail wagging softly as she waited for him to rise. He smiled, the warmth of her presence a steady reminder of the love that had never truly left. He knew the road ahead would be difficult. There would be bumps and bruises and moments of doubt. But as he looked at Lily, He understood what she had always known. The love they shared had never truly gone away. It had just been waiting for him to remember. The bond between a boy and his dog was something unbreakable. It could bend and stretch, it could hurt and grow, but in the end, it could never truly disappear. And as Eli stood there, his hand resting gently on Lily's head, he knew this to be true. Together, they would heal. The morning sun spilled through the kitchen window, casting a warm golden glow over the small breakfast table. The smell of pancakes and bacon filled the air, and for the first time, in what felt like forever, the house seemed alive with energy. Eli sat at the table, his hands wrapped around a cup of hot coffee, his eyes still heavy with sleep, but filled with something else, something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Lily was sprawled out on the floor beside him, her tail thumping occasionally as she watched him with an adoring gaze. The bond they had shared, so fractured for so long, was now being rebuilt, piece by piece. Every day felt like a step forward, and every step felt lighter. It wasn't just the mornings that had changed. Throughout the past few weeks, Eli had found himself going back to school, reconnecting with his friends, and even starting to smile again. There was still a heaviness in his heart, a lingering sorrow that never fully disappeared, but the weight of it wasn't as crushing anymore. Lily had reminded him of something he had forgotten: the ability to love again. And his mother, she had been trying. She hadn't been perfect, but she was there. She was listening. She was learning how to make up for the lost years, for the pain that had nearly broken them both. It was a slow, delicate process, but for once, Eli believed that it was possible. They could heal. Together. As Eli sipped his coffee, his mother came into the kitchen, carrying a plate of pancakes. She set it down in front of him with a quiet smile. "I thought you might want a little something extra this morning," she said, her voice soft but filled with warmth. Eli looked up at her, his eyes meeting hers. There was a certain peace between them now, a silence that didn't feel heavy, but comforting. "Thanks, Mom," he replied, his voice steady but touched with gratitude. She sat down across from him, taking a deep breath. "I've been thinking," she began, her tone tentative. "I don't know what the future holds for us, but I do know that I'm not going to give up on making things right." Eli nodded slowly. "I know you're trying," he said quietly. "I know." It wasn't an easy conversation. There was so much unspoken between them, so much pain that couldn't be erased with a simple apology. But what Eli had learned in the past few weeks was that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the hurt. It was about moving forward. And right now, that was all he could ask for. After breakfast, Eli and Lily walked outside, the crisp autumn air biting at their skin. The leaves on the trees were beginning to change, the vibrant colors reminding Eli that life, like the seasons, was constantly evolving. And though it felt like everything had once come to a standstill, now, things were in motion once again. Eli's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It was a message from Ms. Harper, the teacher who had helped bring him and Lily back together. "Eli, I was thinking about your story. I think it could help others. I want to share it with the school. Would you be open to that?" Eli stared at the message for a moment, the idea swirling in his mind. He hadn't told anyone, not even his closest friends, about how Lily had been taken from him or how his life had fallen apart afterward. It had been too painful, too personal. But now, with Lily by his side and his heart starting to heal, maybe it was time to share it. Maybe it was time to tell his story. He typed out a quick reply. "I think it could help. Let's talk more about it tomorrow." He sent the message and slipped the phone back into his pocket, a sense of nervous excitement creeping up his spine. Could he really open up to the whole school? Could he tell them about the love he had lost and the love he had found again? He looked down at Lily, who had stopped to sniff the ground, her tail wagging happily. The answer, he realized, was yes. The days that followed were filled with small but significant moments of change. Eli began to take part in the community again. He went to class with a sense of purpose he hadn't had before. And Lily, the ever-present source of comfort, accompanied him every step of the way. One afternoon, as he was sitting in his history class, Ms. Harper approached his desk. She smiled warmly at him, and for the first time, Eli saw something in her eyes, a deep respect, an understanding that reached beyond the classroom. "Eli," she said, "I've spoken to the principal. We want to create a kindness week at school. We'll be talking about compassion, empathy, and the importance of helping others, just like you and Lily did for the whole town." Eli was quiet for a moment, considering her words. A kindness week. The idea seemed so simple, yet so powerful. It could bring people together, inspire them to open their hearts. And maybe, just maybe, it could help others who were struggling in silence, just like he had been. "I'd like to be part of it," Eli said finally, his voice steady. "I want to help others understand what Lily means to me, what she saved me from." As the weeks went by, the Kindness Week became a reality. Posters appeared on the school bulletin boards, announcing events that would promote understanding, empathy, and community. Eli and Ms. Harper worked together to plan presentations and activities, all focused on the lessons of kindness that Eli had learned through his journey with Lily. The school gym was transformed into a place of celebration, where students gathered to share their own stories of kindness and compassion. And when it was Eli's turn to speak, he felt a wave of nervous energy wash over him. But Lily, as always, was by his side, her comforting presence a source of strength. He stepped up to the microphone, the eyes of his classmates on him. For a moment, his words caught in his throat, but then he saw Lily's eyes, filled with unconditional love, and he knew exactly what to say. "2 years ago, I lost something," he began, his voice shaky but growing stronger with each word. "I lost my dog, and I lost my way. I thought I would never feel whole again." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "But then I realized the love I had for her never left. She was always there, waiting for me. And now, with her back in my life, I've learned that love can heal even the deepest pain." The room was silent, everyone listening intently, the weight of his words sinking in. Eli's gaze shifted to Lily, who was sitting at the front of the gym, her tail wagging as if she understood the significance of the moment. Eli's story didn't end with his speech. It continued in the small acts of kindness that rippled through Pine Hollow, spreading from person to person, touching lives in ways he never expected. And as the town embraced the lessons of love, compassion, and forgiveness, Eli realized that, together with Lily, they had started something much bigger than themselves. It wasn't just a story about a boy and his dog. It was a story about the healing power of hope and the way that, sometimes, love was the only thing that could bring the broken pieces back together. The snow had begun to fall again, gentle flakes drifting from the sky like little whispers of winter. The streets of Pine Hollow were blanketed in a soft, white dusting, and the entire town felt quieter, more peaceful than it had in years. For the first time, the boy didn't feel the weight of grief pressing down on him. Eli walked with Lily at his side, the puppy's tail wagging as she bounded through the snow, her nose pressed to the ground as she sniffed eagerly. He smiled as he watched her, the familiar warmth of her presence settling into his heart. It was an early morning, and there was a quiet, still beauty to the town that made everything seem possible. As Eli walked, his mind wandered to the past, the days when he had been lost, when he had believed he would never be whole again. But now, standing in the snow with Lily by his side, the pieces of his life that had once felt shattered were slowly coming together. Lily had healed him in ways he hadn't even realized he needed. She had brought him back from a place of darkness, and with each passing day, he saw his world differently. He had learned to forgive, not just his mother, but himself as well. His phone buzzed in his pocket, the vibration pulling him from his thoughts. He pulled it out and saw a message from Ms. Harper. "Eli, just wanted to remind you that the Kindness Week event is tomorrow. It's a big deal. Don't forget to bring Lily." Eli grinned, typing back a quick response. She wouldn't miss it for the world. He had agreed to bring Lily to the event the next day, and he couldn't wait to see her interact with the other students, to see the impact she would have on the community once more. The way people looked at her, like she was something magical, something more than just a puppy, made Eli realize that Lily wasn't just his salvation. She was the salvation of the entire town, and she had changed more than just his life. She had changed Pine Hollow. As they reached the bus stop, the very place where it had all started, Eli paused. He had walked this path countless times since his reunion with Lily, but today felt different. Today, the weight of the past was lighter, almost non-existent. He knelt down, pulling Lily close, burying his face in her fur. "I'm sorry it took me so long to come back to you," he whispered, "but we've got a lifetime ahead of us now. Together." Lily nuzzled him, her warmth seeping into his bones, and for a moment, the world was perfect. The snow, the quiet, the memories, it all felt right. But it wasn't just about the past. It was also about the future. Eli knew he couldn't change what had happened, but he could control what happened next. He was ready to step forward and share his story, to show people that healing was possible, even in the darkest of times. The story of how Lily had waited for him, how she had held onto the love they had shared, wasn't just his. It belonged to everyone who had been touched by it. And as he looked around at the snowy streets of Pine Hollow, he realized that the town had been touched by that love too. Later that afternoon, Eli found himself standing in front of a crowd of students, teachers, and parents, the gym buzzing with excitement for the upcoming Kindness Week event. He could feel the nervous energy in the air, but it was different from the anxious tension he had felt in the past. This time, there was hope. There was a purpose. Miss Harper was standing by the microphone, her eyes scanning the crowd, and when her gaze landed on Eli, she nodded in encouragement. Eli took a deep breath and stepped forward, Lily trotting beside him, her red scarf bright against the backdrop of the school gym. He felt the eyes of the entire room on him, but this time, it didn't feel overwhelming. It felt empowering. "Good afternoon, everyone," Eli began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm Eli, and this is Lily." He paused, smiling at the sight of the puppy sitting beside him, her eyes gleaming with excitement. She was the heart of the story, and she had already stolen everyone's hearts. "I want to tell you a little bit about my journey, about how Lily came into my life, and how, in the hardest time of my life, she helped me find my way back." He continued, telling the story of how Lily had been left at the bus stop, of the note pinned to her collar, and the pain of losing her. But he also spoke about the healing, about the way they had found each other again, and how that reunion had changed everything. And then, he said something that struck a chord in the crowd. "Lily never gave up on me," Eli said, his voice quivering slightly. "She waited, and when she found me again, she didn't judge me for the time I had lost. She just loved me." The room was silent as Eli's words sunk in. The power of that statement, the simplicity of it, was undeniable. For the rest of the event, Eli and Lily were the stars of the show. Students came up to pet Lily, asking questions about her journey, about how she had waited and loved, without ever expecting anything in return. Teachers spoke to Eli about how his story had inspired them, and how it had reminded them of the importance of compassion in their own lives. The boy's heart swelled as he looked around at the people who had gathered to celebrate the kindness of one dog, the resilience of one boy, and the love that had brought them together. The town had embraced them, not as a sad story of loss, but as a beacon of hope. Later that evening, as the event wound down and the last of the guests left, Eli found himself standing outside with Lily once more. The night air was crisp, and the stars above shone brightly, as if they were watching over him. He leaned against the wall, his thoughts swirling, and Lily sat at his feet, looking up at him with those familiar, adoring eyes. This is what it's all about, isn't it, girl?" Eli murmured, his fingers running through her soft fur. "This is love. Real love." Lily nuzzled him, her tail thumping softly against the ground. Eli smiled, feeling the warmth of her love seep into his soul. And as the snow continued to fall, blanketing the town of Pine Hollow in a soft, peaceful silence, Eli knew that this was just the beginning. He had found his way back to the love he thought he had lost, and with Lily by his side, he knew that anything was possible. The first snowstorm of the season hit Pine Hollow late in the evening, a quiet force that seemed to blank out the world. The streets were dusted in white, the houses shimmering under a soft layer of frost. It was the kind of night that felt like a beginning, a fresh start wrapped in a blanket of hope. Eli stood in the doorway of his house, Lily at his side, her eyes following every movement he made, her tail swaying gently. For the first time in a long while, he felt a deep sense of peace. The past few weeks had been filled with small victories, each day bringing him closer to healing, each day helping him understand what it meant to love and be loved. And now, as he looked out at the quiet town, Eli knew that this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everyone whose lives had been touched by his story. It was about a dog who had waited for him, and in doing so, had brought the entire town together. The Kindness Week had been a success beyond anything Eli had imagined. Students from all grades had shared their stories, their acts of compassion, and their reflections on the power of kindness. The school had adopted new practices of empathy, fostering an environment of support and understanding that had been lacking before. Teachers had come together to create a curriculum centered around connection and healing. And the town, too, had started to change in small but profound ways. Eli's story had spread beyond the school, touching people in ways he couldn't have anticipated. And now, standing in the doorway with Lily by his side, he realized that the ripple effect of their journey was just beginning. Lily looked up at him with her gentle eyes, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The puppy, who had once been left at a bus stop, alone and vulnerable, had grown into a symbol of love, resilience, and hope. Eli reached down and scratched behind her ears, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, knowing that words would never be enough to express the depth of his feelings. "You've changed my life in ways I'll never be able to explain." Lily responded with a soft whimper, nuzzling his hand, as if to say that she understood, that she had always known. That evening, after the snowstorm had settled and the world outside glowed under a blanket of white, Eli found himself sitting in his room, his laptop open in front of him. He was preparing for his next big step, the next chapter of his journey. Ms. Harper had asked him to write about his experience for a local magazine, to share his story in a way that could inspire others. At first, the idea of putting his emotions into words had been intimidating, but now, it felt like the natural next step. He began typing, the words coming slowly at first, but then flowing with ease as the memories of his journey poured out. He wrote about the pain, the loneliness, the months of searching for Lily, and the overwhelming joy of finally finding her again. But he also wrote about the power of hope and the unspoken bond between a boy and his dog. He wrote about how Lily had never given up on him, how she had waited patiently every day, without knowing what the future held. He wrote about how love had been the driving force behind everything, and how that love had transformed their lives, and the lives of everyone around them. The next morning, Eli went to school, carrying a printed copy of his article. Ms. Harper had agreed to help him submit it to the local magazine, and he couldn't wait to see his words in print, to know that his story was reaching more people than he could have ever dreamed. When he entered the classroom, Ms. Harper smiled at him from across the room, a knowing look in her eyes. "I'm so proud of you, Eli," she said softly, motioning for him to come over. Eli handed her the printed copy, his hands trembling slightly as he passed it over. "You'll change lives with this," Ms. Harper said, her voice full of warmth. "I just know it." The rest of the day passed in a blur. There were interviews with local reporters, more students coming up to Eli to thank him for sharing his story, and a few more moments of reflection. But as the bell rang at the end of the day, Eli found himself outside, walking with Lily again. The town had changed in the past few weeks, and Eli had changed too. It wasn't just the community that had embraced his story. It was him too. He had let go of the pain that had weighed him down for so long, and in its place, he had found a deep sense of purpose. He knew now that his mission wasn't just to heal himself. It was to share that healing with others. As they walked, Eli felt a sense of clarity wash over him. There was so much more to do, so many more ways to help others. He thought about starting a dog rescue with the help of his community, creating a safe space for animals who had been abandoned or neglected. He thought about all the children and families who could benefit from the love and therapy that a dog like Lily could bring into their lives. He had learned, through his own experience, that animals could heal in ways that humans often couldn't. And with his story, with Lily's story, he could make a real difference. He smiled down at the dog by his side, her bright eyes filled with a quiet wisdom. "Together," he said softly, "we're going to do some great things." Lily gave a soft bark, as if in agreement, and Eli laughed. It was a laugh full of promise, full of the future they would build together. As they turned the corner of the street, they passed by the old bus stop where it had all begun, the place where Eli had once felt the emptiness of loss. But now that emptiness was gone. The past was behind him, and the future was wide open, waiting for them to step forward. Eli paused and looked at the spot, his heart swelling with emotion. "Thank you, Lily," he whispered, "for waiting, for loving me, for making me believe again." Lily, ever loyal, pressed her head against his leg, and together, they took their first steps into this new chapter of their lives. The winter passed in a blur of snowstorms and sunshine, of quiet moments spent with Lily and loud moments spent sharing their story with the world. Pine Hollow began to change in ways Eli hadn't expected. More people volunteered at animal shelters, more families adopted pets, and small acts of kindness rippled through the town, affecting everyone they touched. But it wasn't just the town that was transforming. Eli himself felt the transformation deep in his soul. The boy who had once been broken by loss now walked with purpose, driven by the love that had saved him. And at his side, every step of the way, was Lily, the dog who had never given up on him, even when he had given up on himself. Spring had arrived, and the snow was beginning to melt, revealing patches of green grass and blooming flowers. The town of Pine Hollow was starting to look like a place of renewal, just like Eli and Lily. Eli sat in the living room, a cup of coffee in his hands, watching the sunlight dance on the walls. Lily lay at his feet, her head resting on his lap, her eyes soft and trusting. They had built a life together, one step at a time, and now that life was filled with peace. It had been 6 months since the Kindness Week event, and Eli's article had been published in the local magazine. It had received widespread attention, and soon after, the story had been picked up by a regional news station. Eli found himself speaking at conferences, sharing his journey, and spreading the message of hope and love that Lily had taught him. But it wasn't just the media attention that mattered. It was the way people's lives were changing because of Lily's story. He'd received letters from strangers who had been inspired to adopt dogs from shelters, from people who had been touched by the story of a boy and his dog. Some of them even mentioned how Lily's story had helped them heal, just like it had helped Eli. Eli had never imagined that his life would take such a turn, that he would be speaking to audiences, sharing a message of love, and becoming a beacon of hope for others. But as he sat in the warmth of his home, he realized that it wasn't about the fame or the recognition. It was about the impact they had made, the way they had inspired others to love more deeply, to act with compassion, and to never give up, even when the world seemed hopeless. One afternoon, as Eli and Lily walked down Main Street, they passed by the local animal shelter. A sign out front read, "Adopt, don't shop. Every pet deserves a chance." It had become a symbol of the town's shift toward compassion and kindness, thanks in part to Lily's story. Eli stopped for a moment, watching as a family entered the shelter, their faces filled with anticipation. He could see the look of hope in their eyes, and he knew that, just like him, they were about to change the life of an animal in need. It was then that an idea took root in his mind, an idea that would take the story of Lily even further, a way to honor her legacy and ensure that other animals who had been abandoned and forgotten would find a home, just like she had. That evening, Eli sat down with Ms. Harper, who had become one of his closest friends and supporters. They were in the cozy, sunlit corner of his living room, discussing the next steps for his newfound purpose. "Eli," Ms. Harper said, her voice filled with excitement, "I think you should start a nonprofit, a foundation that supports animal rescues and adoption programs. You could partner with local shelters, work with schools to raise awareness about the importance of kindness, and share your story with as many people as possible." Eli felt a rush of emotion at the suggestion. It was the perfect way to continue what they had started. He had been inspired by the change he had seen in his town, and now he was ready to make an even bigger impact. "I think you're right," Eli said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "This story has to keep going. It's not just about me and Lily anymore. It's about every dog and cat out there who needs a second chance." The next few weeks were filled with planning and organizing. Eli, with the help of Ms. Harper, put together a proposal for the nonprofit, which he named Lily's Legacy. It would raise funds for animal rescues, provide support for families adopting pets, and promote kindness and empathy in schools. They began working with local shelters, offering to cover adoption fees for families who couldn't afford them, and organizing adoption events to raise awareness about the importance of giving animals a chance at a loving home. Eli also started speaking at schools, encouraging students to volunteer at shelters and to treat all living beings with respect and compassion. The launch event for Lily's Legacy was held at the town's community center, and it was a huge success. The room was filled with families, animal lovers, and volunteers, all eager to be a part of something bigger than themselves. There were guest speakers, including a local veterinarian and a shelter worker, who shared their insights about the importance of animal welfare. And of course, there was Eli, standing at the front of the room, holding Lily in his arms. As Eli spoke about his journey, about how Lily had been abandoned and waited for him at the bus stop, about how she had healed him, and about the power of love, the audience was captivated. They listened intently as he shared how their love story had transformed Pine Hollow and how it could transform the world. Lily, as always, was calm and composed in Eli's arms, her eyes gleaming with wisdom beyond her years. She was the star of the show, the reason they were all there, and her legacy was just beginning to unfold. As the event came to a close, people flooded the room to sign up as volunteers, to donate, and to adopt pets. Eli smiled as he watched families approach the adoption tables, some holding hands, others holding the hands of children who had always dreamed of having a dog. One woman came up to Eli, her eyes moist with emotion. "Your story," she said, her voice trembling. "It changed my life. I had been thinking about adopting a dog for months, but I just wasn't sure. But after hearing your story, I know it's the right thing to do." Eli smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "That's exactly what Lily and I wanted to do, to inspire people to act with love and kindness," he said softly. "Thank you for being part of her legacy." As the night went on and the event came to a close, Eli felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had found his purpose, not just in sharing his story, but in helping others. Lily had saved him, and now together, they were saving others, one act of kindness at a time. And as he looked around at the smiling faces, at the dogs finding their new homes, Eli knew that this was only the beginning. The love he had once feared was the same love that had healed him, and now it was spreading, touching every life it encountered. The sun hung low over Pine Hollow as spring turned into summer, and the town, like the flowers in bloom, seemed to have come alive. Everywhere you looked, there were signs of new beginnings, freshly painted fences, vibrant gardens spilling out of front yards, and families gathering at the park for picnics and laughter. It was a town reborn, filled with a sense of hope and renewal, and it wasn't just the weather that had changed. Eli watched it all from the bench near the community center, his hand resting on Lily's head as she sat by his side, her eyes scanning the crowd of people bustling around. The transformation of Pine Hollow had been gradual but undeniable. It had started with him, with Lily, and their story. But now, it seemed as though every corner of the town had been touched by the same wave of kindness and compassion that had healed them both. The shelter, once a place of sadness and overcrowding, was now thriving. They had expanded, with more volunteers and a steady stream of families coming to adopt the dogs and cats who had been left behind. The town had embraced the message of love that Lily had embodied, and they had begun to live it out every day. The schools had introduced lessons on empathy, teaching children the importance of kindness, not just toward animals, but to one another. Eli smiled, watching children run toward the shelter, eager to meet the animals waiting for their forever homes. The sight of them, excited and hopeful, reminded him of the first day he had met Lily, when he had never imagined that she would become such an integral part of his life. The bond they had formed had not only changed his world, it had changed the entire town. But it wasn't just the people of Pine Hollow who had been transformed. Eli had witnessed firsthand how the story of Lily's rescue had reverberated far beyond their little town. The foundation he had started, Lily's legacy, was gaining momentum, spreading across neighboring communities and even to cities far beyond. It had become more than just an animal rescue. It had become a movement of hope, of second chances, of loving what had been forgotten, and of healing what had been broken. Eli's phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts, and he glanced down to see a message from Ms. Harper. "Good news, Eli. The article you wrote is being featured in the regional magazine next month. I think you're going to reach even more people with this. Let's make sure we keep the momentum going." Smiling face with smiling eyes, Eli smiled, his heart swelling with pride. It had been a dream come true to see his story published, and now, with the magazine's upcoming feature, it seemed as though their message was about to go even further. He couldn't help but feel that this wasn't just about him. It was about Lily, and all the animals who deserve to be loved. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in hues of gold and pink, Eli and Lily walked along the familiar path by the lake. The gentle hum of the world around them, birds chirping, leaves rustling in the wind, the distant sound of children playing, felt like the perfect soundtrack to the peace that had settled into their lives. But as they walked, Eli's mind wandered to the one thing that had remained constant through all of the changes, the note. The note that had been pinned to Lily's collar the day she had been abandoned at the bus stop. The note that had set everything in motion. "Her name is Lily. She's gentle. Please take care of her. I had no other choice." Eli still kept that note tucked away in a safe place, a reminder of the love and sacrifice that had brought them together. He thought of the woman who had written those words, the woman who had made the heartbreaking decision to leave her puppy behind, knowing that it would be the only way to give her a chance at life. He wondered what had happened to her. Did she ever think of Lily? Did she ever find peace, knowing that her decision had led to something so beautiful? "Do you ever think about her, girl?" Eli asked, looking down at Lily, who was happily sniffing the air, her tail wagging in time with the rhythm of their walk. Lily looked up at him with those soft, knowing eyes, as if to say that she understood. She didn't need to dwell on the past. She had found her place, and that was enough. The next day, as Eli and Lily arrived at the community center for a meeting with the board of Lily's legacy, they were greeted by an excited group of volunteers and supporters. The room was filled with energy, everyone eager to continue the work they had started together. "Eli," Ms. Harper greeted him warmly, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "We have some great news to share. We've just partnered with a new shelter in the next town over. They've agreed to join the initiative, and we're already seeing an increase in adoptions. We're making a real difference." Eli felt a surge of pride. He had known this would happen, but hearing it out loud made it all the more real. "That's amazing," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't have done this without all of you. This is bigger than just us now." Ms. Harper nodded. "And it's only going to get bigger, Eli. People are listening. People are changing." As the meeting progressed, Eli's thoughts drifted again to the note. There was something about it that still tugged at his heart, something that felt unfinished, as if there was a piece of the puzzle missing. He knew it was time to take the next step. He needed to find the woman who had written it, the woman who had given him and Lily the chance at a future. Later that week, Eli took action. He contacted local shelters, asked around town, and posted a message online, hoping someone would know the woman who had left Lily at the bus stop. It wasn't an easy search, but with each call and message, his resolve grew stronger. And then, finally, one afternoon, a message came through. "I think I know who you're looking for. Her name is Jessica. She used to live here, but she moved a while ago. I'm not sure where she went, but I can help you find her." Eli's heart raced. This was it, the missing piece. A few days later, Eli found himself driving down a familiar road, Lily by his side. He was nervous, his palms sweating on the wheel as they neared the address he had been given. When they arrived, Eli knocked on the door of a modest house, his heart pounding in his chest. A woman answered, her eyes wary but warm. "Can I help you?" she asked softly. Eli's breath caught in his throat. This was her. This was Jessica. "Hi," he said, his voice trembling. "My name is Eli, and I'm looking for someone who left a puppy at the bus stop a while ago. Her name is Lily." Jessica's face paled, and for a moment, she said nothing. Then, she stepped back and motioned for him to come in. Inside, the conversation was quiet, but the weight of it was heavy with emotion. Jessica told Eli her story, the struggle she had faced, the reason she had made the decision to leave Lily behind. It was a story of love, of sacrifice, and of a mother who had done everything she could to give her puppy a better life. As they spoke, Eli felt a deep sense of compassion for this woman, for the pain she had carried with her all these years. And as he looked down at Lily, he realized that the missing piece of the puzzle had been found. Love had led them here. Jessica reached out, and with trembling hands, she gently stroked Lily's fur. "She's grown so much," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I'm so glad she's with you." Eli smiled, his heart full. "She's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. I owe her everything." And in that moment, a quiet understanding passed between them. The bond that had begun with a note and a red scarf had come full circle. It was a story of love, sacrifice, and hope. A story that had not only changed Eli and Lily's lives, but had transformed an entire community. And as they stood together, sharing a moment of peace, Eli knew that Lily's legacy would continue to grow, touching the lives of everyone it encountered. The days seemed to stretch endlessly in the most beautiful of ways. Pine Hollow had settled into a rhythm of gentle change, a town forever marked by the love that had blossomed from a puppy left alone at a bus stop. In the weeks that followed Eli's reunion with Jessica, Lily's legacy had grown even further. More volunteers had come forward, more shelters had partnered with the nonprofit, and more families had adopted animals in need. But through all of this, one thing stood out to Eli more than anything else: how much he and Lily had changed the lives of those around them. The town, once quiet and unremarkable, had become a beacon of compassion and hope. And at the heart of it all was Lily, the puppy who had waited and never given up. One warm evening, as the sunset cast an amber glow across Pine Hollow, Eli found himself sitting on a bench in the park, just like so many times before. Lily was at his side, as always, her body stretched out comfortably beside him. He gazed at the people walking by, some of them with dogs in tow, some alone, but all with smiles that seemed brighter than before. He had come to realize that life was a tapestry woven from countless threads, some of joy, some of pain, but all of them meaningful. Lily's story, his story, had become one of those threads, weaving through the hearts of the people in Pine Hollow and beyond. Eli took a deep breath, closing his eyes for a moment as the cool evening air filled his lungs. He had been to the shelter that morning, signing paperwork for the new partnership they were forming with the larger animal advocacy organization. Their mission to educate, to rescue, to bring hope was now reaching beyond the state of Pine Hollow and into neighboring communities. But even with all the success, there was still something bittersweet about it all. For while Lily had brought so much light into his life, there were still moments where Eli couldn't help but reflect on the darkness that had once consumed him, the loneliness, the pain of loss, and the emptiness of a world without hope. But those moments were fleeting now. His life had been filled with light, and it was all thanks to Lily. The sound of footsteps interrupted Eli's thoughts. He opened his eyes and saw Ms. Harper walking toward him, her warm smile ever present. She had become one of his closest friends, someone who had not only helped him get Lily's legacy off the ground, but had also supported him in ways that went beyond the work they did together. "You're up late," she said, sitting beside him on the bench. She glanced down at Lily, who had shifted slightly, resting her head on Eli's knee. "I just needed a moment," Eli replied, his voice soft. "Sometimes I can't believe how far we've come." Ms. Harper chuckled. "You've come a long way, Eli. And don't forget, it wasn't just you, it was Lily too." Eli smiled, his heart swelling with affection for his dog. "Yeah, it's hard to believe she was ever that little puppy at the bus stop. Now she's this amazing, gentle soul who's changed everything." "You've both changed the world," Ms. Harper said, her voice filled with pride. "The work you're doing with Lily's legacy is incredible. It's inspiring." Eli nodded thoughtfully. "It feels like everything we do just keeps leading to more. And I don't think I could ever stop now. This mission, it feels like a calling. I know I have to do more." Ms. Harper watched him for a long moment, as if seeing something deeper in him. "You've found your purpose," she said finally. "And I can tell you, the world is better for it." A few days later, the weather warmed further, and Pine Hollow hosted its first ever Adoption Day, an event organized by Lily's Legacy in collaboration with the local shelters. The town square was transformed into a bustling hub of activity. Tables lined with brochures on pet care, volunteers talking to families, and excited children running to meet the adoptable animals. Lily was the guest of honor, of course, and Eli couldn't help but beam with pride as he walked her around the square. The dog that had once been abandoned at a bus stop, the dog that had carried with her a note filled with heartbreak, was now a symbol of love and hope. As they made their way through the crowd, Eli noticed how many people had been touched by their story. Some stopped to congratulate him, others shared their own adoption stories, and some simply smiled at Lily, who happily wagged her tail, soaking in the attention. "Eli," a voice called out, and he turned to see a familiar face, Rachel, a local teacher who had been part of the community's efforts to raise awareness about the importance of kindness toward animals. Rachel approached him with a wide grin. "I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done. I've adopted 2 dogs since hearing Lily's story, and I'm working on a program for my students to volunteer at the shelter." Eli's heart swelled with gratitude. "I'm glad to hear that. It's amazing what one story can do, right?" Rachel nodded, her eyes filled with emotion. One story can change everything, and Lily's story has changed so many lives already. Eli glanced down at Lily, who seemed to have an innate sense of how much she had accomplished. She looked up at him, her eyes gentle, her fur gleaming in the sunlight. She had given him so much, and in return, he had promised to share that love with the world. As the afternoon wore on, the event was a resounding success. Families adopted animals, donations poured in, and the message of love and compassion spread far beyond the walls of the town square. It was a moment of triumph, a moment when everything Eli had worked for felt like it was coming full circle. But amidst the crowd, something else caught Eli's attention, something small and unexpected. A little boy, no older than 5 or 6, was sitting on the ground with his arms wrapped tightly around a scruffy dog, his face buried in the animal's fur. The boy's face was streaked with tears, but there was something about the way he clung to the dog that spoke volumes. Eli walked over and knelt down beside the boy, his heart aching as he saw the pain in the child's eyes. "Hey there," he said gently. "Is everything okay?" The boy looked up, his cheeks flushed with tears. My dog ran away," he said between sniffles. "I miss him so much." Eli smiled softly and reached out to pat the boy's back. "I know how hard it is to lose a friend, especially a dog. But you know what? Sometimes the best friends find their way back to us, even when we think they're gone forever." The boy nodded, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. "I want to help other dogs like Lily." Eli's heart melted. "That's a beautiful thought. And you know what? I think you're going to do just that. You've already started." Later that evening, as the sun set behind the hills and the last of the event's noise faded into the distance, Eli and Lily walked home, side by side. The day had been everything they had hoped for and more. They had touched so many lives, and the ripple effect of their story was spreading far beyond Pine Hollow. As they reached the edge of the park, Eli glanced down at Lily. "You've changed everything, girl. And I promise you, this is just the beginning." Lily looked up at him, her eyes filled with wisdom and loyalty. She had always known that love was the most powerful force in the world. And now, through her story, so many others were learning that same lesson. Together, they had started a revolution, one that would continue to grow, touching hearts, healing wounds, and reminding everyone that love was the answer to everything. The soft hue of twilight bathed Pine Hollow in a tender pink glow. The day was fading, but the warmth in the hearts of the town's people was only growing stronger. On the wide balcony of the newly renovated Pine Hollow Community Center, Eli stood still, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Next to him, sitting proudly with her ears perked and her red scarf fluttering slightly in the breeze, was Lily, the dog who had once been left behind in the cold but had since found her place in the world. Eli placed his hand gently on Lily's head, and she leaned into his touch, closing her eyes with a soft sigh. The sound of distant laughter and music from inside the building filtered through the open glass doors behind them. Tonight had been the final gala event of Lily's Legacy, a community program that started with one puppy at a bus stop and had since grown into a movement of kindness, healing, and second chances. He glanced down at the golden fur beneath his fingers. "We did it, Lily," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "You did it." Inside the center, people from all walks of life were mingling: teachers, firefighters, children, seniors, doctors, and shelter volunteers. They had come together over the past year in ways no one could have predicted. Therapy animals from the Legacy program had brought smiles to hospital rooms. At-risk kids had found confidence in training the rescues. Lonely seniors had found companionship and joy. And all of it began with Lily's story. Eli remembered the exact moment he found her, curled up, trembling on that bench, eyes searching for someone she would never see again. That note still lived in a glass frame inside his home office. "Her name is Lily. She's gentle. Please take care of her. I had no other choice." Back then, he didn't know what to expect. He had just followed his heart. And now here they were. "Eli," a voice called softly from behind. He turned to see Ms. Harper, the elementary school teacher, who had become one of the biggest supporters of Lily's legacy. She stepped onto the balcony with a cup of cocoa in each hand. She offered him one with a smile. "Figured you might need this." He chuckled, accepting the drink. "Thanks. I needed the warmth." She looked down at Lily and bent to stroke her gently. "Still wearing her red scarf, huh?" "Always," Eli said. "It's part of who she is now. It reminds me that even the smallest act of love can change everything." There was a silence between them, peaceful and full of meaning. The kind of silence that didn't need filling. "I can't believe how far this has come," Ms. Harper finally said, leaning on the balcony railing. "That every dog adopted through the program gets their own scarf now. It's beautiful. I saw a little boy in town the other day, walking a beagle with a yellow one. He said her name was Poppy, and she'd helped him not be afraid to sleep alone anymore." Eli smiled, pride swelling in his chest. That's what this was always about, giving people and dogs a second chance. They both turned to look out at the town below. Pine Hollow was lit up in tiny specks of light: street lamps, porch lights, shop windows glowing with early holiday decorations. It felt magical. A car rolled by slowly on the road below, and Eli's eyes caught sight of something painted on the side. Lily's Legacy Therapy Team. Healing hearts, one paw at a time. The van turned down a side street and disappeared, but the message lingered in the air like a promise. Behind them, the gala was reaching its final speeches. The mayor had taken the stage, his deep voice amplified through the speakers. And tonight, we honor not just the story of one dog, but the story of what can happen when compassion leads the way. Pine Hollow is forever changed because of Lily and because of the man who saw her not as a burden, but as a beginning. Applause echoed through the open doors. Lily stood up on all fours, tail wagging as if she recognized her name. Eli knelt beside her and scratched under her chin. "They're talking about you, girl." She barked once, softly, and licked his cheek. Her eyes were bright, clear, and full of life. The two of them stepped back inside the center. Dozens of photographs lined the hallway. Dogs with their new families, kids reading books beside their therapy pups, hospital patients smiling with a furry head on their laps. And in the middle of them all was the now iconic image. A snow-covered bus stop bench with a little German Shepherd puppy in a red scarf waiting. People stepped aside as Eli and Lily walked through the crowd. Some smiled, others wiped away tears. Children reached out to pet Lily, and she greeted each one with patience and gentle enthusiasm. They made their way to the front of the room, where the mayor handed Eli a plaque. It was engraved with simple words: "To Lily and Eli, for reminding us that hope has 4 legs and a beating heart." As Eli accepted it, he held it high so everyone could see, then turned to face the crowd. "I don't have a long speech," he said, voice steady, "but I have a simple truth. None of this would exist without love, without the courage to look at someone, animal or human, and say, 'You matter.' Lily mattered. Every one of the animals in these photos matters. And all of you, for believing in this mission, matter more than I can say." He looked down at Lily, who sat at his feet, tail wagging gently. Lily was abandoned, but she was never broken. She waited in the snow for someone to come. And when I found her, I thought I was rescuing her. But the truth is, she rescued me. She gave me purpose. She gave this town a cause. And now, together, we've made something that will last long after we're gone. The room was silent for a moment before thunderous applause filled the air. People rose to their feet. Cheers and tears alike filled the space. Later that night, as the gala ended and the guests trickled out into the cool night air, Eli and Lily found themselves once again on the balcony. This time they didn't speak. They simply watched. Watched the stars twinkle into view. Watched the wind rustle the trees. Watched the lights of Pine Hollow flicker like candles in the dark. Lily leaned against Eli's leg, her head resting on his foot, eyes slowly closing in peaceful contentment. He looked down at her. "My girl," he whispered, a tear slipping down his cheek. "Look at what you've done." And as the night deepened around them, Lily's red scarf fluttered in the breeze, no longer a symbol of abandonment, but one of love, hope, and a legacy that would never fade.